Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Antifederalist Radio, providing you with libertarian perspectives and opinions on current events for the liberty-minded. We are taking the fight to the airwaves as we stand for liberty, oppose tyranny, and give equal opportunity in exposing the hypocrisy of the Democrats and the Republicans. Without further ado, here are your hosts, Joe and Joe.
Great to be with you guys. I'm Joe, your economic host, and along with me is Joe, your activist host. And together we are pleased to inform you that we have another special tonight. Tonight we are interviewing Shannon Bray. Shannon Bray is the Libertarian candidate for the U.S. Senate seat in North Carolina, currently held by Tom Tillis. Shannon is running against both Tom and Cal Cunningham as basically the third-party representative, and there to represent our voice and your voice for liberty and individuality. So, Paul, without further ado, will you go ahead and bring Shannon on live? Okay. Hey, Shannon, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, guys. I'm doing well. How you doing?
Fantastic.
Doing pretty well.
So with standard procedure, and I'm sure you were listening to us right before we came on the air, we want to go ahead and just let you open up and basically speak what you want the people to hear. Just speak about your policies, your platform, your vision, and we'll go from there and ask you questions as we go on.
Sounds great. Well, I actually like to operate on the stance of simplicity. So and I also try to act on a stance of a lack of hypocrisy. So every stance I take comes strictly from the stance of personal liberty. So whether it's the Second Amendment, the abortion, and your right to choose, it all comes down to what the government has the right to tell you what to do versus what your own personal freedoms are. So with that comes the basis of the large majority of my decisions or where my stances are. But one of the reasons why I'm in this race really falls more down into veteran services, taking care of the people who've gone to war for us, but then also limiting a lot of our war interactions moving forward, mostly trying to, bring our troops home. So with that, that's really kind of the bulk of what I want or of what I really stand for. But I would love to really kind of answer specific questions and dive down into policies, just with people knowing that by and large, it's I fall on personal liberty over anything else.
Okay. So with that being said, we now know where your focus is and where your convictions are. So, Joe, I think that what we should do is do what we did last time with the previous interview, is that I'll do a question and then you do a question and we'll just go from there. Does that sound good, Joe?
That sounds good to me.
Okay. So, Shannon, since your passion seems to be concentrated in foreign policy, first off, I've got a two-pronged question. One is that, if I'm not mistaken, you are a veteran. Is that correct, sir?
That is correct.
And you held the rank of lieutenant commander, which would be an 04 in the United States Navy, correct?
In the United States Navy, and I've also done quite a bit with the United States Coast Guard.
Okay, wow, that's impressive. So I do want to give you kind of a background on us. So my colleague, Joe, the activist, he was a Marine, and I also served in the United States Navy. Now, I served enlisted during 06 to 2010 during the time of the Operation Iraqi and Enduring Freedom, and, that kind of tail end of those kinds of operations. So I deployed over there. So with that, the idea of bringing our troops home and putting an end to the war strikes a very personal tone with me, and I know it strikes even more so with Joe being a Marine. So can you kind of outline a little bit of details into your strategy as to, put an end to the wars? Where's your focus going on? Is your focus on going in the Middle East and starting from there? And, kind of like what's your systemic vision there?
Well, that's an excellent question. Ideally, I would love to be like everyone else that says just we have to pull just everyone out with no strategic value. But, having served and having lost a lot of our fellow countrymen, fellow veterans, service members, a lot of what they fought for, we don't necessarily want to be in vain, but we also want to be cognizant of, the losses that we've actually sustained. In reality, ideally, we're not looking to go start new wars. We're in over 150 active conflicts right now as we speak. So as we talk about Afghanistan and Iraq and all of that, there's a larger global footprint that we have with our troops, and they're not necessarily always just in what CNN or Fox News covers. So ideally, I would like to restrict the money that we're sending out of the country, keep it home, and take care of our veterans with it, as opposed to, still piling foreign aid out to other countries. And it's not just like not one theater. I'm talking about across the board that we just start scaling back.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Joe, do you need to follow up on that one?
No, I will follow up as time goes on, but I'll let you give your shot at it.
Okay, Mr. Bray, or I don't know what you like to go by. I'll call you sir. I was enlisted. I'm used to calling you sir.
No. You just call me Shannon. That works for me.
All right, we'll go with Shannon. So I was looking at your website, and one thing that did pique my interest was your health and child care. And I'm going to read it straight from your site. Let me know if I have the wrong website, because that'd be awkward if there's another Shannon Bray. The cost of health care has become ridiculous. Families with employer-provided I do believe that my screen is cutting off part of that. There we go. Families with employer-provided health care
that is my site. And no, I would like to make health care affordable. I really think that the pharmaceutical industry so it wasn't really until I started looking into having a political office that I really understood how the pharmaceutical industry worked. So there's a lot of research that happens at the university levels. They get grants and people discover new technologies, or they discover vaccines, and then they all get pushed up to big pharma for mass production, and that's really where all the profits are coming from. But we have very little benefit off of presenting these companies with these ideas that they turn around and go and they patent, and they're patenting ideas that aren't even theirs originally, and then they make millions of dollars off of those. So ideally, it would be we strike there first, right? We can't just give everyone free health care. Obviously, it falls off it falls off on multiple layers, starting at the hospital layer. But if we're able to really cut down the medical costs with the pharmaceutical companies, that's where I think we need to start. I mean, I have a family of 5, and we pay over $1,000 a month for health insurance, and that's absolutely ridiculous.
I understand. And I agree with you on that, and I especially think in the case of pharmaceutical industry, the problems start with our intellectual property right legislation and how we do intellectual property in regards to pharmaceuticals. The question that I wanted to really ask you, and to clarify on your platform, is that under health and child care, you say, I feel the health care for all plan sounds promising, but has to have a financial plan on how it will work so the country understands the impact. Now, as a diehard libertarian, I read that as quite nearly an endorsement for Medicare for all, and I was hoping you would clarify.
Oh, yeah, and that's a great point. I'm not opposed to Medicare for all. I think it's a great pipe dream, right? As a father with children, we always want to make sure that our families are taken care of. But at the same time, and who's gonna pay for all of this? And to be fair, when that site was written, we were looking at a $2 trillion deficit, and I thought that was horrific. And now we're going to be over 5 soon. So it really becomes so yes, having global health care for every citizen of the United States sounds like a wonderful thing, but we do have to be able to pay for it. And all I really care about is if we're able to take the money from the pharmaceutical industry or whatever and then route that in, then I'm all behind it. But I am not willing to raise our taxes for Medicare for all when it's going to cost us more money to provide that than it will actually than we pay now. So I'm not opposed to the idea, but no one has presented a plan that I think would ever pacify a libertarian platform.
And on that note, I don't think any person ever would when we get down to the issue of Medicare for all. I don't know if you've ever listened to our podcast, but I usually go on with the economic viewpoints, and of course Joe provides supporting information. But one of the damaging things about Medicare for all is that the increases in government spending would be astronomical compared to where we were historically, and it's that government spending that damages the economy because, as you probably know, with all the military spending that goes on, that military spending consumes resources off the market that could be used for private enterprise and private innovation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's not even with the way the current model goes, they're not trying to restrict the cost. They just keep billing us more or start tapping into our tax revenues for Medicare instead of trying to cheapen the cost at the pharmaceutical level. Right? I'm not trying to take money out of the hospitals. That wouldn't be my plan. But there is no reason to have pharmaceutical companies making billions of dollars off of stuff that people need that they didn't even define their research on. The research was given to them. So that's that's not the equal opportunity and supply and demand and business brings in opportunity. No, this is a complete different scam. It seems based off of who actually does the research versus who actually gets to produce the product, and then who ultimately has to pay for it.
So you're saying that essentially speaking, from what you have done on your research, is that really it has been the colleges and the higher education centers that have really done the back work for doing a lot of the research on developing, say, a new type of prescription drug. Would you be saying that you're wanting to reform the patent system then that is protecting these pharmaceutical companies from, say, private enterprise competition?
Yes. And I think while I am a big fan of the patent system itself, when it comes to how some of this medical research and the pharmaceutical industry is using it, I think it's being abused.
Thank you. Joe, you're up.
All right. I would like to talk a little more about your Homeland and cybersecurity platforms. Now, I'm not seeing many candidates that focus on cybersecurity. The vibe I'm getting from your page is modernization, and my hope is that modernization leads to lower cost in the long run, but I would like to hear it in your words.
Yes, I'm a cybersecurity expert in my daily job. That's really where I'm coming from in some of my other stances as well. When we look at how many data breaches we have, so I've been a federal contractor now for almost 20 years. My data, even at the federal level, has been compromised 4 times through government breaches. There was a big OPM breach that was a major one that hit everyone with top secret clearances, or basically everyone with a clearance. So we have a problem with people not being able to control our data. And even at the government level, we're not able to secure it. So in Europe, right, people actually own their data. They can go to a company and say, hey, what information do you have on me? The company has to provide it. And if the client says, hey, I want you to delete your data, then it has to go away. We don't have the same laws here in the United States. In fact, all your data keeps getting sold and sold and resold. So we're essentially a lack of privacy, right? And then you hear everything with the NSA and all the stuff they're doing. We're in a position to where nothing is private. So one of the stances that I would like to take is start fighting back on that, even knowing that a lot of the conservative voices are saying, well, if you don't have anything to worry about, then you don't necessarily have to worry. I disagree. I think information should be private and that we should be able to have end-to-end encryption. In fact, I have a book that's coming out here in August that is specifically on encrypting data and how it's done in a particular programming language. So to me, data privacy and security is paramount.
How would you suggest we go from what we have now, where you click checkbox on terms and services and that's it, your information is gone, to a point where I actually own my own information?
Well, they do it in Europe, right? So it can be done. So it's more on, it's really on the definition of who owns the data. Really, if you're collecting data on a particular person, that person should own the data. I guess more in a libertarian world. Like maybe somebody can corner up some alternate or universe where the business owns it, but to me it's more on the personal aspect. But how to get there would definitely take modeling our privacy laws after more of what Europe does as opposed to what we're currently doing. We have some of the worst privacy laws in the United States right now as we are.
One of the things that's been going on now is that there's been a lot of bluster from the Trump administration for the last 3 years, and this has been a mantra among the Republican Party for, I would say, since Mitt Romney's candidacy for president in 2012, is about the looming threat of China, particularly as a threat to our own cybersecurity. So there's always these arguments that the Chinese are stealing our data, they're stealing our technology, they're stealing our secrets and stuff, and especially with businesses and things. For you, Shannon, is China of any concern to you geopolitically as a threat? What's your stance on there as you would take if you became the next senator?
China is a slippery road. So there are a number of Chinese manufacturers that I think that should be blackballed from U.S. manufacturing, like some of our phones and whatnot. But then there's also a lot of over accusations on other technologies that aren't necessarily as nefarious as some of the other ones. So let me break it down. We have at one point you had a Chinese company selling government cell phones or cell phones to the United States government. I believe that should be something that is, in simple terms, considered bad, right? But then you also have the DJI is a popular drone company, right, in the United States, and even the U.S. government has a lot of interactions with DJI as a company. Now, every drone that we have flying around in our airspace is not communicating back to China. So there's some misunderstanding on what information is leaking versus not. But I would definitely be more on the, let's restrict a lot of the Chinese manufacturers from creating equipment that we're at least using at our government and corporate levels, not necessarily our personal levels. I think people have given away their personal rights and their personal liberties a long time ago, jumping on Facebook, using iPhones, doing all of that. We've slowly given all that away. I just want people to understand what they've given away.
Okay. Thank you for that. Joe, you're up.
Shannon, for the next couple of questions I'm going to ask you, they're very much on recent social issues. You strike me as a very technical and mission-oriented person, and this isn't exactly the focus of your platform, but alas, you are running for public office, and you will face these sooner or later. First one is the mask. Do you wear the mask? Should you wear the mask? Do we have to wear the mask? Tell us your thoughts on the mask for COVID-19.
Me and my wife and I were just having this conversation. So I personally don't wear a mask unless absolutely required. I am a concealed gun carrier, and it is illegal in the state of North Carolina to both carry and wear a mask. So the fact that I always carry tells me that I can never wear a mask. Now, let's talk about the medical aspects of the mask, too. So a mask in itself doesn't actually stop the virus, right? You can have your mom and your dad hit a sewing kit and make you a nice little mask, and it doesn't actually stop the particles from flying through. So I think they offer a sense of false security. And then even so, when you watch people and they utilize their masks, some people wear gloves, they don't even know how to properly don them, take them off. So they're sitting there grabbing every aspect of it and touching their face, and it does absolutely no good to wear a mask in most cases. Masks are pretty much a people pleaser. That is my opinion.
Okay. Just so you're aware, and I'm trying to verify my source on this right now. It was shared by Mayor Nancy Vaughn of Greensboro. There's been a recent legislative change. There it is. Section 14-12.11 of the North Carolina General Statutes, which is a piece of temporary legislation. Yada, yada, yada. Basically, for the duration of this crisis, you can carry and wear a mask for when that occasion should arise. Just so you're aware. I do believe that's temporary. Once all of this blows over, especially once the mask mandate blows over, you probably will be back to choosing one or the other. Joe?
Now, I did just read like 20 minutes ago that the governor has removed the because wearing face masks used to be illegal in North Carolina, primarily due to relations with KKK and whatnot. I understand that they're getting ready to sign an order, if they haven't already, that removes that. So then I still default to, I feel like wearing a mask is a people pleaser. So okay. I personally choose not to, because it scientifically doesn't make any sense to me if somebody's wearing a mask or not with the way that they handle the regular business. I mean, when you watch someone for 10 minutes right? And they pull it down, their nose is out. When you watch somebody wear a mask, you realize that people have no training on how to do it. So all this is a people pleaser.
No, I completely understand.
Right. And with that, oh, sorry, Joe.
Nope, I'm done.
Okay. Right, and I think you hit it on the head. I think one of the concepts about government, and this is a problem, is that government always likes to give the idea that it's doing something in a crisis. The last thing a government wants is for the people to think that the government is doing nothing, and I think that's a problem with our society today, is that when a crisis hits, we don't look to ourselves for the solution. We look outward for someone else, and we usually cry out to government. So speaking of that, I want to pivot away from the COVID-19 issues that have been going on and get more into domestic policy, in particular your economic policy and your fiscal policy. As a person, just as Shannon Bray, the candidate running for U.S. Senate, do you feel that the size of government and the scope of government has gotten excessively too large, as most libertarians do? Do you think that the government is spending too much money, taxing too much, those kinds of things? And if so, and also with the fact that, the government's been running debt, we've been running endless amounts of deficits, do you have any ideas to help rein in that extra spending and try to reduce government down to more of its constitutional boundaries?
That's an excellent question. And before I started this campaign, I thought I did. To be honest with you, I was primarily looking to focus on the war against drugs, scaling in the DEA, looking at Homeland Security. But when we basically double our deficit overnight, with bailout plans that haven't necessarily been proven to increase our economic standing, it really kind of it mushroomed everything that I thought I knew about where we were going as a country with our economy. I never thought that we could even exist this far in debt. We are at a level now that we're so far in the red. It's scary when you start looking at how other countries now can credit squeeze you and demand that money that they put into our currencies, and once they pull that out, I mean that essentially bankrupts our company, or when I say company, I mean it bankrupts our country. So we are in a position now that we are so deep. I'm not exactly sure the best way to get out without really start scaling back on some of our revenue changers. So out of the gate, maybe we start looking at reforming the DEA. And then we start looking at legalizing marijuana more as a profit source than a confinement source. I really think that is a good start to working things out. But when you go from $2 to $4 trillion in deficit, those numbers are so large. That's not something that is astronomical almost when you start blowing out your deficit like that almost overnight.
Right. And just for the frame of reference, though, and as far as I know, with the stimulus bill, that one-time stimulus package is not going to be used as the baseline to increase all future budgets. So typically speaking, after the stimulus is passed and the emergency loans were given out, I think the baseline will go back to the norm. Is that your understanding, or are you telling me that what we're seeing now?
We're going to have to pay for it sooner or later, right? And whether or not you got a stimulus package or not, unfortunately, with me working in IT in the area that I'm in, me and my family, we didn't get a package. But unfortunately, a year from now, 2 years, 5 years from now, we're going to end up still paying for it.
Right.
From a stance and from a libertarian stance, in my mind, and I'm my own personal libertarian, if it went out, if the tax break or the money stimulus goes out to everyone, right, absolutely everyone who's paying their taxes, including the rich, right, and then when we all pay it back, then it makes a little bit more sense. But for me to pay for someone else's bailout that I didn't get to vote for or whatnot, and I got no benefit in, that makes me angry.
Right. No, I completely understand on that. But as far as reforming anything, you're not advocating openly right now of reforming any, like saying making any cuts to the defense spending bills for the Pentagon, or to say that you're wanting to cut out the Department of Education. I mean, I know you mentioned the DEA and possibly the FDA.
I would first go against our outward spending that we give to other countries. Yeah, I would start restricting that. As a military man, as a veteran myself, I have a love-hate relationship with the military budget, right? We have to have what we need to have to do our jobs, but there's also a lot of wasted there. So I think that some of that would be under review. I wouldn't put a blanket statement on that whatsoever. But then when we're looking at DEA and Homeland Security, and when you say Homeland Security, that kind of sounds scary to reduce any funding there. But there's so many departments that fall under Homeland Security that I don't necessarily feel are providing the American people their due justice. So those are the areas that I would first look at. But like with some of your immigration services, drug services, and whatnot, I would look to scale those back. But then also the money that we're just giving, other countries, that I feel like that money should at least stay here and take care of our homeless veterans.
Okay. That gives me a better idea. Thank you for that. Joe, you're up.
Okay. Shannon, give me your thoughts on Black Lives Matter and everything that's been involved with that in the past 4 or 5 months, if you don't mind.
Wow, that's a loaded one. I've gone full spectrum on this. It really wasn't until the George Floyd issue, I guess, really went mainstream and became an issue it was an issue from the beginning. I'm trying to be very careful with my words, but there were so many issues with how our police society was handling our minorities. It was starting to be televised. I think George Floyd kind of put the exclamation point on a lot of things. I can't say that every issue that Black Lives Matter raises is a passion project for me, but I can say that since the George Floyd episode, I've been paying a lot more attention and have been seeing a lot more on the corruption side. I don't think that every instance has necessarily been bad, but to be honest with you, I feel, it's tough. I feel more like a jackass, if I can say that, for not paying attention to some of it before. Coming from my background, with the military background, my dad was a police officer, also in the military. I had a natural trust for, A, our federal government, and, B, our police departments. It was a very hard boundary for me to start thinking about how the corruption levels were so far out. But then the more you start examining it and you start looking at, basically how there's an abuse of power at pretty much every level, it it's disturbing. I would actually, at the beginning of my campaign, I don't think I would have stood behind Black Lives Matter, not with the way that they were currently pushing out, but I stand firmly behind them now. I feel like we are at a point in our police system to where we do have a level of hatred just coming through the way that we police our citizens, and it has to be addressed. I don't know how to fix that. It's been something that's been it was something that wasn't even on my radar, I guess, but it is definitely something now that, my kids are starting to ask about, and we have a biracial family unit here in my family. It's a very complicated subject, and I wish I had a really good answer. The only thing that I can say is that my thoughts and feelings on it has transformed dramatically over the last 4 to 6 weeks in favor of Black Lives Matter.
I like to hear that. And we're going to take here just a moment to mention a couple of things. We are Antifederalist Radio. If you want to get in touch with us, you can reach out to us here or through our email, which Joe will have to say because I always forget it, or reach out to us on Facebook.
It's antifederalistradio@gmail.com.
There you go. Reach out to us on Facebook. You can find us here on Blog Talk Radio, YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, I think, is another one. We are currently interviewing the Libertarian candidate for the North Carolina's U.S. Senate seat, Shannon Bray, and he is fantastic. Check out his website. Also, we are about to start pushing some merchandise. If you want yourself an Anti-Federalist Radio t-shirt, reach out to us on Facebook, get us your size, and we'll get a shirt out to you here soon. Joe, you got anything else to throw on that?
Only that if you want to support Shannon Bray, his website is shannonbray.us. You can go there and you can click on his donate button there. It's in the top center in the blue, and show him some support. Also, if you are Libertarian, the Libertarian Party obviously needs your support, both on the state level in North Carolina and on the national level. To go there and to support, you can go to lp.org and you can go to lpnc.org. And if you don't have any money to donate, you can always sign up to volunteer. We always need candidates to volunteer to help do things with outreach. You can get in touch with local affiliates. We're very active here where Joe and myself are located, which is in Guilford County. And, just become active to spread the message of liberty here. So with that being said, Shannon, I'd like to ask you another question is that I'm sure that, you have done some research and some homework on your opponents in the race, Cal Cunningham and Tom Tillis. Can you kind of illustrate a little bit of, and where you stand against them and where you stand with them? So, kind of point by point breakdown. What things do you agree with Tom Tillis on, or do you agree with anything Tom Tillis on, and where do you disagree? And then do the same with Cal Cunningham.
Sure. I'm actually a fan of Cal Cunningham personally. I've had the opportunity to meet him on the campaign trail a few times, and him and I stand equal on many stances, especially when it comes to more on the personal liberty and the equality issues. These are something that him and I both stand firmly behind. On the flip side, he's more of the health care for all and raising our taxes, and I'm more on the let's find a way to lower our taxes, and if we are going to supply a health care program to everyone, then we need to cheapen it and then find a way to actually pay for it. Now, Mr. Tillis, on the other hand, is a different story, right? So he's a conservative like myself, but he's failed to state a number of times, in my opinion. The ones that stick out primarily are the fact that, so our military bases were hit fairly hard during hurricanes last year. And not only that, some of our Marine bases, our Army bases in the state have been under disrepair for a number of years. So we've been needing money to come in and fix these bases for a long time. Now, this year, well, I don't know if it was this year. It was actually last year now, fiscal year. Tom Tillis diverted $80 million of money that was supposed to go to our military bases to the border wall to support Donald Trump's immigration stance. I disagree with Donald Trump's immigration stance. I disagree with how Tom Tillis funneled money out. That was money that was earmarked for our state, our bases, the citizens in our state, our military members and our veterans. And this was all money that was just given away. That was primarily one of the reasons why I got into this race, because I realized that Mr. Tillis was going to continue to fail us at the conservative level. So those are pretty much my biggest faux pas, I guess, with both those candidates.
Okay. I'd like to double down on that a little bit. If you were, do me a favor real quick and sell yourself to either a Tillis or Cunningham voter, somebody that's maybe trying to look across the fence and see if the grass is greener and you're on the other side. Sell yourself to those voters real quick.
Excellent. So from the Republican standpoint, the best way I sell myself is I am a conservative. I want to reduce the budget. I want to shrink the federal government. I want everything that most conservatives or Republicans want. Where I draw the line comes on how we handle our personal freedoms. Personal freedoms to me should be paramount across any party. So then when we're looking at our Democratic friends, right, there's a lot of personal freedoms that they offer, but then we have a lot of federal oversight to make sure it happens and a lot of taxation that happens. So I would like to shrink the federal government on the Democratic side, make sure that we still have our personal freedoms, but not necessarily have all of the high taxation that comes along with all the federal governments that come along with it. One of the things that neither one of the parties adjust for is our cybersecurity. So every day our information is going across the world. We don't know where our information goes. We don't know who owns it. The only thing that we know is that we're constantly being compromised. So whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, I'm pretty sure you want your information kept secret. You want the federal government out of your daily lives. You're looking for privacy. But at the same time, you're looking for, a government that will take care of you without overtaxing you. So that's what I think that, candidates in the Libertarian Party offer versus the Republican Democratic parties.
Excellent. Thank you.
So with that, going into the size and scope of government, Shannon, and also, if you ever have any kind of questions about economic policy, you are more than happy to reach out to myself. As I've always said, I live, breathe, and dream and sleep all things economics. But one of the things that is the gigantic boogeyman to the Libertarians, and it's something that the Republicans and the Democrats ignore, is the Federal Reserve. What's your stance toward the Federal Reserve? Are you for it? Are you against it? Are you neutral about it and just don't know enough about it? Where do you stand on that?
That was really never a target point for me up until just recently. And then I started doing research. And the more research I do, the less Federal Reserve I want. I don't yet have I have an opinion that the Federal Reserve is hurting us more than it's helping us. I do not yet have an opinion on how to fix it yet, though.
So piggying back off of that, how do you think that the Federal Reserve is hurting us? And just keep in mind, this is not a test question by any means. What we're trying to do is peel back the layers of the onions and let our listeners kind of understand where you're coming from on this. Because to me, this is like the underbelly. This is something that the Republicans, Democrats have ignored for decades. And to me, this was something that sold me. This was what brought me over to the Libertarian Party. I can tell you this. That's what I used to be a Republican. I became a Libertarian, quite frankly, because of the total ignorance among the two parties about the Fed. So just kind of explain, where do you think that the Federal Reserve is hurting?
I really wish I could give you more of an intellectual statement on this. It's been a while since I did the research on it. It's just something that I don't know enough. I've done enough research to realize that we have an issue with it, but I haven't done enough research to really identify on how we fix that issue.
Okay. So then let me piggyback and ask you another question then, and then I'll let Joe ask his next question here. Going to a total economic policy, and this kind of ties in with our foreign policy with military. I know you mentioned that you really wanted to cut back on foreign aid, and you wanted to bring our troops home, and you wanted to rein in the Homeland Security, which I completely agree with all three of those things. So talking about bringing our troops home and with the foreign aid, talk a little bit about how you wanted to redirect at least some of those funds, or did you want to redirect all of those funds to Veterans Affairs and Veterans Aid? Talk about some of where are the things that the government has kind of failed on that, and what you would like to see get done.
So we have, on average, 22 veterans a day committing suicide. We have a VA system that is failing our veterans. Now, ironically, in the state of North Carolina, we have both the best and the almost worst VAs in our state. So I believe Asheville is number one in the U.S., and then when you look at Raleigh or Durham, I forget which one is, fighting for last place position. We have that. I'm not looking to divert all the funds. I would be happy if they divert any funds. When you walk down the streets of Washington, D.C., and you see the homeless vets, or whether it's Washington, D.C., or whether it's down in Raleigh, North Carolina, we should never have this problem. These are the people who signed a blank check for their lives to defend our country, and now they are starving and suffering. We should not be giving money to a foreign government for their dictators to make profits off of that cash, off the back of our veterans. So to me, whether we give it all to a veteran program or just some of it would make me happy. In fact, if any of it diverted, then I would consider, this campaign a success. I'm not necessarily looking to win an election. All I care about is people start taking care of our veterans and start understanding that we waste so much money overseas, but then we keep throwing our kids overseas and we keep breaking them. And when we break them, they need to be fixed. And if we just fix this one thing, life in the United States would be so much better.
I'm pretty happy with that answer, Joe. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think that was pretty concise and overall arching as it is.
All right. And I just want to say, Shannon, we weren't really planning on just dropping you in the hot seat tonight, but so far the run of the conversation has just been grilling the crap out of you, and I'm sorry about that.
Hey, no, look, I appreciate it. It gives me a chance to speak. A lot of the things that we had planned were canceled for the coronavirus. So a lot of the engagements that I had, planned on, I'm not necessarily looking for people's votes. All I want is their awareness, right? We don't jump in as a third-party candidate looking just to change the world overnight. Really what we're trying to do is spark ideas, gather some momentum, and just let people know that it just takes one person, one day, a little effort, really to kind of change the path of, what our state and local government looks like. And, ultimately, if we change just some of the people in the state more towards libertarian views, then I win.
Absolutely. Now, I want to pitch you one. You said you're a conservative. Give me a moment. Well, I might have to mute my mic to sneeze, but regarding gun rights, the standard libertarian platform is that absolutely any gun law is an infringement, and Republicans don't quite follow that hard on it. Where do you put yourself on gun control?
I like the laws that North Carolina currently has. It took me 2.5 months to get my concealed carry, came with a background check. It does make me feel better knowing that any violent criminals in the state of North Carolina are not allowed to carry concealed. So I do kind of piggyback on that, but I do feel that any law-abiding citizen should be able to carry concealed without having to go through such a large process. So maybe I just bounce back and forth on that. North Carolina has some very friendly gun laws, not as good as Colorado, but I feel that my family is well represented in how we're able to carry and how we're able to defend our home. Currently under North Carolina law. And I carry everywhere I go as long as it's not posted. I mean, obviously we follow the law there. So I'm good with current laws. I do not feel that, having concealed carries open up for, school shootings and some of the other arguments that come from the Democratic platform. I think a lot of that is that of fear. But I'm also not, let's just stop doing background checks on everyone. I think that's going too far. I do believe the background checks are critical.
Okay. That may be a hard sell to a lot of libertarians, but dig your heels in on it, I guess, if it's what you're about.
I get that. I get the, when it comes to just open carry and whether or not someone's licensed, that I understand that that's a big issue. I just, so we know that criminals will carry no matter what, right? And they're going to shoot at you regardless. I feel that every person should have the right to defend themselves, and they should never have to worry about prosecution. But to get a concealed carry license in the state of North Carolina, I do feel should have a background check. Primarily because I want I get the issue there. I get that might be a hard stance. It's just something that I haven't yet tackled personally myself as far as where I draw that line. To me, North Carolina does fairly well on their gun control.
Okay. Joe?
Yeah, so Shannon, why don't you talk to us a little bit about your personal life? Let's pivot away. First off, I'm intrigued by your career in the United States Navy and the Coast Guard. And I guess you've worked primarily in the IT background and such. Just give us a little bit of breadth about that, because I found that absolutely fascinating when I was looking through your website. I was scouring through and trying to get down on the details, and I was like, you're a lieutenant commander. That is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, so in the Navy, I didn't do information technology. I was a diver. So I spent most of my time underwater, whether it was either in dive gear or a submarine. Now, with the Coast Guard, I've done an incredible amount with the leadership units with their information technology, and over the last 20 years, information technology has been my primary focus, whether it's been with Homeland Security. I've done work with the State Department. They've shipped me off to Afghanistan. So I've worked for a number of federal agencies as an information technology specialist and a cybersecurity expert. So I've had the ability to both see what's coming in as far as information and attacks, and what's flying out, but then also where we have overspending in some of those areas as well.
So, what are your thoughts on Space Force?
Oh, that's a good question.
So I was actively working a government contract when that got announced, and I was working for a department that oversees funding. And I'm going to pick my words here. We thought it was a joke when we first heard about it, which was before it came out in the news. All right, to be fair, the Space Force is the same job that the United States Air Force has been doing for a long time. Creating a new department just to do that job function didn't make any sense to me. They are staffing those positions by pulling people out of the United States Air Force and other government contract positions. I think the United States Space Force is a complete waste of taxpayer money. I think that kind of sums it up.
So, Shannon, do you, speaking of this, and because, the idea of the Space Force right now with our limited role inside of space is absolutely ridiculous. Do you have any idea how much money is actually being wasted on these kinds of dream projects that Donald Trump is trying to push through the pipeline?
No, I have no idea how much Space Force is costing. I know that the border wall was 5 times more than what was publicly announced, and even that, I think, is a low estimate. So, it's been for Donald Trump to come in to say, he can't possibly say he's a conservative because, he's not only doubled our budget, but he's doubled our budget or deficit for a very long time. It's just a huge waste of money in all aspects. I don't think a border wall is the right move. To date, I believe we have about 250 miles of added wall. That's a lot of revenue that I just feel that we could have diverted to some other program that would have been useful versus, a wall that's not. But I do have a tendency to get on a tangent on that, so I'll just let that one sit.
You can go on a tangent. Honestly, it's why exactly. No, by all means, go on that tangent. Stand your ground on it, because as of right now, we have established a new defensive measure that's going to be very effective as long as the cartels don't have access to Bronze Age technology like ladders.
Right. And shovels to dig under.
Right. They were digging holes and jumping fences long before all this other stuff. So, yeah, to me, if we're going to do border security, we have to do it right? And And that would be with satellites, that would be with drones, that would be with land switch technologies, so kind of worked like landmines. There's ways to detect human trafficking across without building a monument to yourself. That's how I feel on it. I'm not necessarily. I say that I'm open border. I'm open immigration. I'm not like let's just patrol everything. But I also believe in offering opportunity to those people who don't have opportunity offered to them. I'm very lucky to live in the United States. I'm very lucky to be born in the United States. My daughters, when I traveled to Afghanistan and I saw how little girls were treated there, it was amazing how patriotic I felt when I knew that my kids were being raised in the best place that they could possibly be. We're not facing gang violence and, my sons and daughters don't have to be worried about being, raped or murdered based off of where they live. We are fortunate, we are lucky, and we should open these opportunities to other people who are trying to do their best to make better lives for their kids. So I am very open to immigration in all forms, but not necessarily open border, just to have any Tom, Dick, and Harry cross, without notification. So that's I'm just trying to dial in where I am on that whole immigration status, but that's kind of where I sit.
And
I
to the
are the people who that need asylum, right? Anyone who needs asylum, I feel like we should open our arms and help to take care of them. Not necessarily with, it's not necessarily a taxpayer's burden always. Sometimes it just comes down to being human and taking care of humanity.
Yeah, and to kind of elaborate on one of the points you made, talking about all the technology we can use to modernize that, it sounds like to the listener without direct knowledge of the subject, that sounds like a good way to just watch people go back and forth across the border. I'm going to tell a personal story from the military, not really personal, but also this might be classified, but by now my classification, my security clearance is expired, so I don't really care. I think I'm clear to talk about things that I know. I was with 2nd Intelligence Battalion for my first 2 years in the Fleet Marine Force, and we had a platoon called, Global Sensor Platoon? Ground Sensor Platoon, GSP. We called them GSP. And this was actually a platoon of infantry with an intelligence battalion. And what these guys would do is actually very often, usually it was the border. They would go down to the border and they would plant these sensors that are smaller than a lunchbox, like barely bigger than a Yeti coffee mug. They would plant these things underground all along the border. And what these things do is they just basically detect movement. They detect tremors and motion, and they can tell you if it's people going by, if it's vehicles, how many of what. And this infantry platoon would actually use this to intercept cartels and intercept drugs. And we always asked if they were in combat, and they never gave us a straight answer on that, which that's the nature of the military, is we don't have military engaging people at the border, or probably not. Like I said, I may get a black hand in the mail for telling that story on air, but
Yeah, no, that's
you came through a little broken.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was in the process of walking. It's illegal actually for our U.S. military to operate on U.S. soil. So that's why when Trump sent everyone down there before, they weren't even armed. They couldn't do anything outside just stand there. So that was a complete waste of money.
Yeah, and he wasn't the first. I was Obama administration, and that would have all been about 2012, 2013 when I was supporting that mission. I never went myself, but I was part of the crew that maintained those sensors. And that's the nature of the military that a lot of people don't realize and a lot of taxpayers don't realize, is that you are financing a lot of weird, backdoor, dirty little secrets that you don't know about. I had 4 deployments with Muse, and I'm talking to 2 Navy guys. Y'all know as well as I do how often you're out on the water and you get buzzed by a Russian jet or a Korean submarine or a Chinese warship, and you're out there just playing chicken with these ships. And it's the kind of stuff that if anybody knew about it, it'd be on the news, but it's what we do. We're out there constantly on the verge of war and saber rattling at each other, and the taxpayers just don't realize that's what their money is being spent on.
Yeah, when I was on yourself, Joe, when I was on deployment in the Middle East, we were in the Persian Gulf, and I was on the admiral's staff as part of their flagship aircraft carrier. And every time we would have these tiny, just like 1 or 2, tiny Iranian gunboats. And when I imagine this, imagine a fisherman's boat with a motorized engine on the back and a machine gun put on top at the front. And they're riding around these tiny little boats that can hold about 3 or 4 people tops, and against an aircraft carrier that mans over 2,000 personnel. And this is no joke. If I'm lying, I'm dying. They would be chasing us. We would be hauling ass running away from them because we don't want to get into a confrontation with them in the least bit to risk a war with Iran. But this was back in 07 and 08.
Oh, my goodness.
All right, Shannon, so that is probably going to do it for our episode tonight. Would you like to leave our listeners with final thoughts, and then I'll wrap up and close this out?
Sure. Yeah, and first, thank you for having me on, and thank you to listeners for taking time out of their busy schedules to kind of listen. Ultimately, my goal is personal freedom. We want to be able to live our lives the way that we want to be able to live them, no matter how you choose to live them, whether you're gay, straight, black, white, or whatever. You should have the same opportunities as any other person. And ultimately, we should be taking care of our own communities prior to, being a worldwide outreach and sending our young people to war. That's pretty much the blanket statement on what I care about. There are a lot of other policies that we really didn't necessarily talk about, but to get an understanding of who I am and where I would be, if you just kind of think through it, is on the personal liberty side, if you see where personal liberty would happen, that's pretty much where I would take my stance, as opposed to being wishy-washy. The number one thing I try not to be is hypocritical. So I pick a stance that I feel that fits widely across the board, and I never try to deviate from it. And if somebody backs me into a corner on something, then I need to change my policy, not just my statement. So I try not to be hypocritical. I try to take care of our veterans. And other than that, that's me in a nutshell.
All right, guys. That was Shannon Bray. Once again, he is the candidate that is running for the office of the U.S. Senate seat in North Carolina, currently held by Tom Tillis. If you would like to support Shannon, you can go to his website at shannonbray.us. That's shannonbray.us. I'm sure Shannon wants volunteers. He probably needs those, and of course, he always needs donations. We're always, as third-party candidates, we're definitely underfunded against the political machines of the Republicans and the Democrats. So if you like what you heard from Shannon tonight and you want to come out and support him, be sure to do that. Also, as a general rule, is to go to the LP.org. That's the Libertarian Party National website, and you can sign up there for volunteers and also donate, as well as lpnc.org. That's the Libertarian Party of North Carolina. If you like what you heard with us, you can like and subscribe to us. Like us on Facebook. You can follow us from there, and you can sign up for Blog Talk Radio. You can subscribe to us. That way you always get access to our content. You can do the same thing with on Stitcher and Spotify and Google Podcasts. We're all located on there. And now we are on YouTube, and we'll be shortly uploading this episode here featuring our U.S. Senate candidate. So once again, we thank you for listening to us tonight. And this is Antifederalist Radio, and we are signing out.
Thank y'all. Have a good night.